All right, jumping into chapter 2, test review. Gonna start out on the test, I think just a couple of irrational number. Actually, I think these are, I don't even think you have to do anything with irrational numbers. These are square roots that are actually going to be perfect squares. So just understanding that, later on in the year, we're going to have equations where we're going to get two solutions, the positive and negative roots. So square root of 49 is 7. This means that can be the positive root of 7 and the negative root of 7. We'll just write our answer like that. Here, we talked a little bit about this. I think you get that the minus sign can't be on the inside because you can't, to get a square root, it would be what times itself would give you that. You can't multiply the same thing. It's either, positive times positive or negative times a negative. It always has to be a positive on the inside. But on the outside, you can. This basically says take the square root of 121, which is 11, and make it negative, right? Or the opposite of the square root of 121. And then this one kind of trips people up sometimes. Just 1 is a perfect square because 1 times 1 is 1. So the square root of 1 is just 1. All right, going to start with some two-step equations. Don't think we need to spend much time on this one. Get rid of the addition, subtract on both sides. 3t equals 12. Right, we knew it's a two-step equation. There's nothing to do over here. It's only variables on one side. Last step, divide by 3. T equals 4. Here, really just, when you see fractions, sometimes they mean different things. What I want, when you see this and then you got just the variable and the numerator, think of this just as division, which is what a fraction really is. And so it's a two-step where I'm not going to worry about that right now. I don't need to do anything with that because once I add, I'm now left with just this division on the left, and I can get rid of division using the inverse of multiplication. And I'm now done already. Okay. Here, a couple ways. We showed a shortcut on if you want to get rid of fractions like this, you always can. We could multiply everything by 4, right? Multiplying by 4 on the left would distribute to both of those. Multiplying by 4, that's the LCM, or the least common denominator of those. It would make it go away. Or we can just keep the fractions and do the steps. So to get rid of subtraction, I would need to add 1/2. I can show us both on this. Add 1/2 to both sides. That cancels. I'm left with 1/4 W equals common denominator. I'm just going to do some work out here to the side. 1/4 plus turn that into 2/4, and I'm left with 3/4. To get rid of 1/4 being multiplied by W, I'm going to divide by 1/4, which is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm just multiplying by 4 on both sides, or 4 over 1. Those 4s can cancel. Right? Or if you're still caught up in not enjoying simplifying before, I can go get 12 over 4, but this is easier. Canceling factors on top and bottom, leaving just 1s in its place. I get 3 over 1 or just 3. Okay? And again, if you wanted to, multiply everything by 4 at the beginning. This is going to distribute 1/4 times 4. That's just going to give us 1 W. 4 times a half, a minus half, is going to give us -2. And 1/4 times 4 is 1. Very simple equation now. Add 2 on both sides, so we get W equals 3. Okay? All right, this is really making sure you can do all the things we've learned up until this point. Chapter 1, right? Being able to take words and create equations, understanding this vocabulary of what functions and inputs and output mean. So output, we need to know that's y, and then it's the word range. We're not needing to know that right now. Is 7 more, so something plus 7, 3 times the input, the domain, which is x. So this is what I need to start with. Y is 7 more, 3 times the input. You will need to be able to do that. I think on the test I broke it into 2 problems. The first problem is doing that, then doing this next part where they're going to say, okay, great. So I've got this linear equation with 2 variables. Now they're going to tell us one of the variables. Okay, so I already did this part. Write an equation with x and y. Did that. Then, second question on the test will say, solve for the input, x, when the output, y, is negative 20. So I need to understand what I'm doing is taking that and substituting it in for the y. Negative 20 equals 3x plus 7. Two-step equation. Subtract 7 from both sides. I'm going to bring it up over here. I'm left with negative 27. And on the right, I'm left with 3x. Divide by 3. I get negative 9. X equals negative 9. Okay. All right, then we get to some multi-step equations here that still just have variables on one side. So I'm just simplifying on each side first, right? The right side for both of these are already simplified, but I need to simplify the left. Each one's slightly different. This one, I can combine some like terms, right? I'm not doing the opposite. When I'm simplifying, I'm just doing what it says. 3p minus AP, or 3p plus negative AP. I get negative 5p. I'm not moving things around yet. Now, because it's simplified, now I am, right? The goal is always this. This is the goal. I need to get rid of all the things over here, starting by getting this alone, by getting rid of this plus 32. Subtract 32 from both sides. I get negative 5p equals, I'm above 0, I go down, that's going to be a negative 29. Divide both sides by negative p, not going to be a perfectly nice integer, and that is okay. I'm left with p. Negative divided by negative is a positive. I am just going to leave it improper, and it cannot be reduced, so that is all that I need to do. If you went further and turned it to a mixed number, fine. If you turn it to a decimal, fine. I'm not going to take points off, but stop there. We can do more with improper fractions later in the year if you just leave it like that. Okay? Number 9. Don't be, well, they're not like terms anyways, but we can't combine even if they were like terms there, because that would be addition. I need to do multiplication first. Order of operations, always a thing. So I need to start by distributing that 2. I'm going to get 4z plus 2z minus 16 equals 14. Don't worry about the 16 yet. Yes, we're going to get rid of that in a second. I guess we could do it in one step, but the step right now is combining those like terms. 4z plus 2z. Then, if you wanted to, you could have added 16 at that step too. That's fine. 6z equals 30. Divide by 6. Z equals 5. Okay. I'd pay close attention to this one. There's one very similar where understanding this equation, how it works, will be key. So hopefully you're watching this and you're hearing my words. Pay attention to this. So a young person should sleep 8 hours each night plus 1/4 hour if every year the person is under 18. So if you think about that, like the younger you are, the more sleep you need. Because, you know, if you're 2 years old, then you're 16 years away from that. You're going to take 1/4. So that's another 4 hours that a 2-year-old needs to sleep. Sleep in 12 hours. That sounds lovely. So the following equation, A, the age of the person, can be used to determine S, the recommended amount of sleep. So here's the age. All right, so you're going to plug in the age, 18 minus that. The example I just gave was 2, right? That gives us 16. Take 1/4 of that plus the 8, that gives us the recommended amount of sleep. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So how much sleep is recommended for a 14-year-old? So all I do is here, 18 minus 14 plus 8, and I'm going to solve. I'm going to tell you right now, the problem on the test is not going to be as easy as you just plugging things in. Okay, that's actually 2 questions. One of them is multiple choice, but then you're going to have to know more than just this question here. So I'm going to go 1/4. Going to do my order of operations inside here. I get 4 plus 8. 1/4 times 4 is 1, plus 8 is 9. Most of you, should be getting 9 hours of sleep every single night. That is what is recommended. Not by me. That's a real equation pediatricians use. Okay, here we go. Definitely always understanding that algebra can be used everywhere. And in geometry next year, you will see it used a ton, because you're going to be able to recognize that things are congruent. That's a fancy way in geometry to say equal. And if things are equal, we can use algebra. We can create equations. So here, they are telling us each side length of this equilateral triangle over here is 6s feet long. 6s, and it's equilateral. They're all the same. That's what these little lines actually mean. 6x, 6x, 6s. If the perimeter of the triangle, ABC, this triangle, is equal, so let's just start right there. What is the perimeter of any shape? It's just adding up the sides. So that means if I go 6s plus 6s plus 6s, that has to equal the perimeter of the square. So the perimeter of the square is the square S. What's the perimeter? S plus S plus S plus S. Let's just call that 4S. Okay? And then I'm going to solve. I'm going to add these up. I'm going to get 18S equals 4S. Kind of weird from here. I need to now, this problem is a little bit faulty. I made this one up based off of the one on the test, and I think I made a mistake. This is not actually going to work out. So I will explain then in class what the one you actually needed to know. This should have been a value. Let's look at it differently real quick. What if I told you that instead of it being the same variable, this was, say, a on 9 on all sides. This is what it's supposed to be, something like this. All right, so instead of 4s over here, we're going to go 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9. We get 36. And now we can say these two things are the same. My bad with that problem, which then I would be able to solve by dividing by 18. You'll see that then s equals 2. Okay, and then maybe if they ask you to step further, they might say, okay, well, what is the side length of the triangle, one of the triangles, of the triangle, one of the sides? You'd have to plug that in. You'd see that these are 12, 12, 12. Okay, so that got labeled incorrectly. I apologize for that. I'll make sure in class we talk more about it. All right, some equations now where we have variables on both sides. Remember, it adds this if possible because we know sometimes things happen where there's going to be no solution or infinite solution. So here, anything to do on the left side? No, it's simplified. No distributing, no combining like terms. Same for the right. I now to the step where I've got variables on both sides. I want it to go away on one of the sides. Recommendation, doesn't have to be this way, but again, it makes it easier, more efficient. Find the smaller variable term, that'd be 2y. Make it disappear by just taking it away. And I'm allowed to do that as long as I do the same to both sides. I'm left with 3y plus 13 equals negative 17. Pretty easy two-step equation from here. Subtract 13. And just so you know, on the test, there's 20 questions. I made it 4 pages worth, so you've got a lot of work to work with, open space. The review doesn't give you as much. I saved a little paper with this one, but the test, tons of space for you. Divide by 3, we will get y equals negative 10. Okay, here, similar, but I do have some simplifying to do. This one's going to really make you be careful with your minus signs, and also kind of a weird thing perhaps towards the end to make sure you understand. So I've got a minus 2 here. That's what has to distribute. Be very careful. Very common mistake is to forget. Most people realize that one, but then they forget to bring it to this term as well. I've got negative 2 times negative 3. That's going to be plus 6. I'm not done over here. I need to be able to combine there. I'm going to get negative 2 plus 6. Get rid of the variable terms on both sides, right? Well, get rid of the smaller one, but we should recognize right here. You probably recognize from right here that there's no solution. But I can show that by I'm adding 2x on both sides. I get 0. That does not equal 6. No solution. Okay. Few proportion problems. This one could be solved a couple different ways. You could probably recognize that I would have to go 7 times 3 to get 21. That would mean I have to go 3 times 3. D has to be 9. You could certainly cross multiply anytime you want to, right? You could do it now, get 7D equals 63, end up with the same answer. This one, you absolutely need to cross multiply. We can't figure out 3 times what, 8 times what. So I have to do cross multiplication. It doesn't matter which diagonal I start with. Let's just do this one. Make sure we understand we're multiplying 8 times that whole thing, which means it has to distribute. And then here, I'm not sure if this confuses you. So this is just negative 10 times a times 3. I'm just going to go ahead and write that. So multiplication is commutative. I can change the order. So I'm really just going to be multiplying the 3 times the negative 10. Okay, so as I distribute here, I get negative 32a minus 8 equals negative 30a. All right, so again, from here, get rid of the smaller variable term, which is the one that's more negative. So I'm going to add 32a. And now notice you'll see that that's going to turn into a positive. So I'm left with negative 8 equals positive 2a. Divide both sides by 2. A equals negative 4. Okay. A proportion type problem. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be. But, anytime you're working with scales, it's proportional, maps, whatever it might be. Proportions are an easy way to just set it up. Help yourself not make mistakes. So I take this first ratio. I've got 1 inch on the map is 75 miles in real. And sometimes it's even nice to just write map, real, okay? Because I have to line that up. I could have switched the 75, or the 1 could have been written however I wanted, but when I write the next part, I have to make sure it's lined up. 2 cities are 675 miles apart. That's in the real world. So that goes on the bottom. How far apart on the map? That's what I'm trying to find. So let's just call it M for map. Cross multiply. And again, you could do it another way. You could see, is there figuring out 75 times what is that? Really by just going 675 divided by that. I could find that ratio. Let's just cross multiply. 75 times M, don't know what that is, but it's going to be whatever 1 times 675 is. And then divide both sides by 75. And we will see, don't have a calculator on me, but I do know 75 twice is 150. And then that's going to go up to 300. I know that's going to be 600, and then another 75. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, one more. It should be exactly 9. We get the map. On the map, they are going to be 9 inches apart. Okay. All right, write the equation in function form. Hopefully you remember what that means. We need y by itself. And again, soon, we introduced this last year. I'd love it for you to just start doing it now, putting it into y equals mx plus b form. Okay? I'm not going to be picky on that. Just y's got to be by itself. All right, so I'm going to get 3y isolated first by getting rid of a negative 9x. I'm going to add that entire thing. I'm left with 3y equals, again, if you wrote 18 plus 9x, fine, but eventually we're going to really need to put the x term first. Okay, then from here, divide both sides by 3. Dividing this side by 3, I can put the entirety over 3 or break it apart and each of them being divided by 3. That's the same thing, right? Like thinking about when I add common denominators, 1/8 plus 3/8, that's the same thing as just adding in the numerator 1 plus 3 over 8, right? That's that same concept here, that if I had taken 9x plus 18, divide that whole thing by 3, right? That's like this one. I can also break it apart, the 1 over 8 plus the 3 over 8, okay? Which might make it a little easier because now I see, okay, I'm left with y equals 9x divided by 3 is 3x. 18 divided by 3 is 6, and we are done. All right. Formula for the volume of a rectangular prism is given by the volume equals the length times the width times the height. They want us to solve for height. Here it is. It's being multiplied by L and W. I can get rid of that by dividing both sides by L and W. And I am left with H by itself equals the volume divided by L times W. And those look like ones, I know. All right. Hopefully you do well.